On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, I have a chat with a guy who worked in the NBA for 7 years as a scout and head video coordinator for the Wizards, Raptors, and Hawks. He now has his own podcast named Scout with Bryan Podcast, Bryan Oringher, and we talk about his career in the NBA as a scout and head video coordinator, what that was like. He got to work for his favorite team, which is the Wizards, so we talk about that. I pick his brain a little bit about how scouts kind of look at certain prospects. That was fun. We go a little bit more in depth about the Wizards and what they need. And then he gives me his ideal starting five. And it's interesting to see the way a scout's brain works as opposed to all of us normal casual fans. So if you are a fan of basketball and the intricacies, you'll enjoy this one. So without any further ado, enjoy the show, everybody. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a guy that, if you like basketball and you want to know more about the inner workings, the intricacies, the more finer things, you're definitely going to want to check him out and definitely check out his Twitter because he's awesome on Twitter. He worked for the NBA for 7 years as a scout and head video coordinator with teams like the Wizards, Raptors, and Hawks. He's now hosts a podcast named Scout with Bryan Podcast. He's Bryan Oringher. What's going on, Bryan?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, you caught my eye because we started following each other on Twitter. I have no idea how, but just your tweets and the tenacity you have with your opinions and the way you back them with fact is just something that's like, I was a history major in college. So a guy that's able to back up his stuff with fact is always interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have your conviction with your beliefs online. You'll get shouted down even if you have conviction, and even if you are right or believe in them or whatever. So you gotta believe in it. You gotta be a little bombastic at times, but I've never said something I didn't truly believe. So at least I think I have that going for me, unlike the Bayless cowherd type model of just shouting nonsense they don't actually believe.
Yeah, integrity kind of goes a long way, but unfortunately not enough people have it anymore. So we're going to jump right into this. Now, I want to talk about your career because you did something that a lot of us dream of. You went to the University of Maryland, and after doing some stuff there, you went and you became a member of your favorite basketball team growing up as a head video coordinator. How did that come about? What was it like working for your favorite team?
Yeah, it was a dream come true. I'd always wanted to work in sports growing up. Actually, baseball when I was in high school was my real passion, and then when I went to the University of Maryland, I got to start working for the team there under the Hall of Fame coach Gary Williams, who coincidentally I also had grown up rooting for, and then. My junior year of college, got to start interning for the Wizards and became full-time with them right out of school. So, yeah, I grew up watching that big three of Gilbert Arenas, Caron Butler, and Antoine Jameson, and, to get to work for the team, kind of slightly after that with their next run of success, with the playoff years we had with John and Bradley Beal and, Paul Pierce coming through and, some pretty good vets. We got to add to the team eventually. It was an awesome experience.
I always try and enlighten the younger generation when they talk about who's like, oh, these amazing scorers. And don't get me wrong, the scores are absolutely amazing we have now, but no one remembers, especially with this young group, of how good Agent Zero was in his prime, where he was going up against a, young Durant, LeBron James, Kobe was there, all these amazing scorers. And there was a time basically before the whole pistol incident and all that craziness happened, where he was the best scorer in the NBA, and it was kind of bar none at that point.
Yeah, I tell people he was almost like Harden before Harden. I think.
Yep.
Especially,
less whining.
Yeah, well, especially before the 3-point revolution. I gill the fact that he scored 30 a game or whatever it was. Was done mostly with he got to the free throw line a lot, but he he hit some threes, but he hit a ton of mid-range shots, and he would basically just pull up from anywhere, So to think about if he could have played in kind of today's, analytics era where it's threes and rim, I think he would have scored, 30 a night easily. And definitely, I mean, you look at Bradley Beal, I think was, second in the league or something in points per game this season. And, for my money, he might be, one of the best pure scorers in the league right now. And I think Gill is, probably an even better scorer than that. So, yeah, he an unbelievable talent and, real tragedy how quickly his career ended, mostly because of injuries, unfortunately.
Yeah. He's definitely a story with another one with injuries. And, remember, kids, he's one of the first guys to make the 36-footer popular because he wasn't afraid to just throw it up either. And he made a lot of those. So going into the next phase of your career, after you leave the Wizards, after you leave head video coordinator, you jump into being a scout. What was it like actually scouting for the NBA? What were some of the type of things that you were looking for in players?
Yeah, so what I did, I was a regional advanced scout for the Hawks and Raptors. So that job in particular is almost like, you're a legal spy to try to get the other team's play calls. So you get a credential, you sit on the press row sometimes. But, yeah, like if we were, if the Hawks or Raptors were playing the Celtics soon, I would just go and literally watch Brad Stevens all game and write, 11 minutes, he said thumb down, 9 minutes, he called elbow 45, like, whatever the calls were. So that part of the scouting that I did was pretty, standardized. It wasn't as much player scouting as it was trying to get those calls. But, when I spent 6 years in the Wizards video room, you develop a really in-depth, knowledge of the league as a whole. And, I tell people it was kind of like getting an MBA in basketball, just getting to be in the coaches' meetings, every single one, travel with the team, pregame, postgame, halftime in the locker room. You're just exposed to just about everything. So, it was a really totally encompassing experience. And, that job, the video coordinator, obviously is how Spoelstra started, Vogel, Budenholzer, a lot of the coaches in the league today. So it was an amazing intro to basketball. And then, the fact that I also got to spend a season outside the video room actually watching live basketball games in person was a great experience to do, as well as the regional advanced scout.
Did you ever consider going into coaching and taking that route, since you learn basketball so well, you can kind of develop your own theory on offense and defense while doing that video coordinator stuff? Did you ever consider that?
Yeah, I mean, I to this day, I still love coaching. I mean, even though I'm media now, I'm still, I coach a middle school select team. I give lessons all the time. I mean, if, I would love to coach a, high school or semi-pro or AAU, whatever down the road. I definitely, when you're in that video room, you're potentially on a track to be a assistant coach or full-time scout or whatever it is. What I just kind of got turned off by was the instability of the industry and how, if you want to do that, if you want to be a coach, you have to basically be willing to, move around the country every couple of years. And you get, when I was an advanced scout for Toronto, Dwayne Casey wins coach of the year and then gets fired that same year.
Bizarre.
So it's a very unstable industry. And, I tried to carve out something with a little more, where I can choose my own destiny instead of, potentially being fired, even if you win coach of the year.
So did you ever do any scouting on the actual prospect side with high school players or college players, or were you more specifically just scouting the pros in the opposing team?
So when you're the video coordinator, after our season ended, we would kind of shift our focus to, doing a lot of the draft videos and helping out on the court for the pre-draft workouts. So I didn't do, like going to college games in person. That wasn't my job, but certainly watched a lot of film, when we would have, like, say, the third pick when we chose Bradley Beal. Those years in particular, we definitely reviewed an incredible amount of tape to try to make sure we were, making the right decision with him and Otto Porter and, some of the young guys that we, chose with those picks for sure.
So when you're looking at some of these kids, how much does their confidence, their swagger, mean in terms of when you're looking at what their floor is, what their ceiling is? When you're looking at a Bradley Beal, compared to some other kids who possibly have the same type of scoring acumen, are you then looking at how they are as a person, how they carry themselves? How much does that weigh into that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a pretty big part of it. We would. I know there was a test that was kind of given to everybody that would come in for a workout, kind of like 150 question psych exam or something that I, never quite understood exactly. But at the end of it, it would certainly spit out some sort of score related to, all those things: your confidence, your discipline, your motivation. And I'm sure all that stuff plays a role. I mean, I'm a big believer that basketball is hugely mental and hugely about confidence and IQ, and you see that all the time. And guys, Markelle Fultz, for example, he loses his confidence and kind of just gets in his head so much about his shot. And when he started to get some of that back this season, you started to see glimpses of why he was a top pick again. But it's funny because Brad actually is a pretty quiet, very down to earth kid who never was really the showy type, but his confidence was more just reflected in the fact that he was always the first in the gym, last to leave, and just had a phenomenal work ethic. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. You don't necessarily have to be the loud type that's always showing off and talking all this nonsense, but there's certainly certainly plenty of guys that made it in the league because of their confidence, and Paul Pierce maybe is a better example of that, actually.
Yeah.
That he's a guy that didn't have much athleticism at all, and is a kind of pudgy 6'6", 6'7" wing in a league kind of full of those, and he sort of made it off just having unbelievable, unwavering confidence in himself and the work that he put in. So definitely a big part. Not exactly sure how to measure it or scout for it for sure yet, but I think that's certainly an area where scouting can keep getting better, and evaluating that side is a huge component.
Keeping on the scouting a little bit, when you're looking at the things there, and Europeans are now playing more and more of a factor, how did you guys specifically, or you yourself, compare the way the Europeans played as opposed to American prospects? And what has guys like Porzingis and Luka done in terms of how it's kind of changed a little bit?
I think it's super important, first of all, to have a big scouting staff over there, all around the world, really, because you're seeing, more and more that the talent can really come from anywhere. And I know, certainly at the beginning of, or at least, first few years that I was with the Wizards, we didn't do a very good job of that, because I know we didn't really have international scouts or anybody really full-time over there, and then you look at an organization like the Spurs that I know has tens to maybe hundreds of scouts over there, and they've certainly done an amazing job, scouting that talent. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it is hard to evaluate sometimes because, thankfully I actually was I came right after the Wizards drafted Jan Vesely, so I can't I didn't have anything to do with that pick, thankfully. But you watch European ball, and he crushed it before he got to the NBA there, and he's now crushing it again since he's back there. So, speaking to you, like your point about confidence, he's certainly a talented player. He's a tremendous athlete. He can, rim run and block shots and get lobs and do all these, things. But when he got to the NBA, he just kind of was mental mashed potatoes, and he'd airball a free throw and kind of just, be out of it completely mentally. So, it's not always a factor, but I think sometimes, some of the Europeans do kind of have that soft label at times, and you see some of them that can't really handle the, the tenacity and the ultra confidence you need to play in the NBA. But, Luka is certainly handling it just fine. Porzingis is, looking like he's going to be a pretty solid player, obviously, for a long time. So, I think as always, you kind of just have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis and talk to, a ton of people and, try to make sure, you don't miss out on the Luka Doncic's, but, at the same time, you don't overrate the Mario Hezonjas. There's still plenty of busts up near the top, but, the same thing goes for college players and for anybody, really.
Definitely. Now, last kind of question on scouting, and this is possibly a fun one. LaMelo Ball, and just the way he has kind of carved this path, and a talented kid, definitely. Feel a little bad for him because his dad is his greatest promoter and kind of his greatest enemy at the same time. Like, LeVar is both great and terrible for his kids. It's a weird scenario there with them. But how are players like Brandon Jennings, Emmanuel Mudiay, are they kind of having scouts kind of take a little bit of a step back when evaluating LaMelo Ball? And do they kind of like him as the person he is? Like, and do they want to deal with his dad? Kind of give me a little panel on what you feel on LaMelo Ball and how that's going to affect him in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think his dad, definitely is not helping him, at least. I don't know how much, how much he actively hurts him. But I think there's certainly some teams that, are looking at what his dad did with the Lakers and just kind of undermining Luke Walton a lot and speaking out about Lonzo's teammates and just creating, making the whole media show about himself. And it's easy for fans to say, oh, he's harmless. He just has confidence in his kids. He just talks, blah, blah, blah. But, when you're in a locker room and you've got a young, totally unproven player having his dad with this massive media profile, coming out and saying the coach doesn't know what he's doing and the rest of the players aren't doing their part or whatever he said, it's a pain. So I think, I think teams will certainly look at him as a little bit of a red flag. And, beyond that, I think, you just try to evaluate just LaMelo, the player, and see if you can separate him from his dad. And, I'll be honest, I watched 99% NBA during the season, so I actually haven't gotten to dive into his film and really formulate an opinion on him yet. I know at times I've heard kind of mixed things about the work ethic, and, you see some things that, obviously tremendous talent, but then you also see showboating and taking 50-footers and kind of just, messing around at times that I think scouts don't always love. But, obviously he's got enough talent to, clearly be a top 5 pick, it seems. So got a lot of potential, but, we see even with Lonzo, he's a solid player. He does a lot of things well, but, if Lonzo is not able to consistently make jump shots, he's, never really going to live up probably to that billing that he had. So, LaMelo, by most accounts, and seems to be a better shooter, but I still think he has a lot of those same kind of inconsistencies and silly things that, how the dad kind of taught them to play, that, makes him not a sure thing. But, I'll have to get back to you when I really dive into his film. But, I think it's certainly a tough one to evaluate.
I look forward to seeing your kind of Twitter, because you love to put some of your scouting insights on Twitter, which is why you're such a fun follow on Twitter, because you do kind of throw in a little tidbit here. And then if you listen to your podcast, and even if you're a Patreon member of yours, you get even more from that. So it's really cool to follow you in general. Before we jump into talking about the Wizards in general, because I'm pretty sure you still have a lot of opinions, being them team you grew up following. Right now, the G League is making a big push to kind of hurt college. And I think that if the NCAA doesn't get their act together, this can hurt them a lot. We saw 2 straight commits to the G League in the top 50 McDonald's All-Americans, a number 1 overall high school player going right to the G League. And then we saw an official decommit to join the G League. I think there's going to be more to follow. And if they're successful, it's going to, make it a real challenge for college to continue recruiting these type of kids. How do you feel if you're a kid right now, you have a son, or you're an actual athlete, and you have the option to go make $500,000 right away and play with a bunch of grown men with pro coaches, or go to that prestigious school, that Duke, that North Carolina, and get to be coached by other great players and great coaches? What are you choosing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think, certainly if I'm a top 10, top 30 recruit or whatever, and I can make, $500,000 to play in the country versus, theoretically nothing. I think I'm
Theoretically.
definitely taking that 500,000. But, it does have some negatives to it as well. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the plan is for, like, how long is it? I mean, if you really struggle in that first year, and if the coaches don't like you and so on, I mean, can they potentially just, end your or cut you right there, and then you're kind of out of luck and, can't keep playing somewhere? I mean, I don't know exactly the logistics of the whole thing. Maybe you do a little better, but, I think it'll have a mixed effect on the college game. Certainly a lot of the super exciting one and dones like Zion, not having them in the college game, I think is gonna make it take a big hit and take away a lot of the excitement. But you also hear the argument that now more teams will have guys that stick around 3-4 years, and you'll see more of those like classically good college teams that kind of have players develop and are with each other for a long time and learn how to play together.
A whole bunch of Villanovas.
Say that again?
A whole bunch of Villanovas.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's funny, that's the way even, everybody remembers Duke and UNC now, but like that's how they were, they used to obviously, Coach K didn't even do the one and dones until pretty recently. So yeah, like I said, if I was at the very top, I think that money would be too much to pass up. But, if I was somebody that's a little lower down, I would probably opt for, being able to potentially stick around at a school 3-4 years and really develop instead of, potentially being rushed into something, where you could, if you don't make it very quickly, you could kind of flame out.
I think the big difference right now is the NBA needs to make sure that they promote these kids properly and they promote the G League, because I think that's where it's going to hurt them the most. We know college players because the NCAA and the colleges do such a great job, especially televising the games with ESPN. Nobody watches G League. So if these kids are playing, they could be great. And if no one's going to watch them and their name isn't out there, no one's going to want to know who they are. And, everyone's trying to build their brand now. So I feel like kids are definitely going to consider that. If these kids going in there don't have any promotion and nobody knows who they are, even if they end up being a top 5 pick in the draft, it's going to take them a little bit. And I think that's something that's going to be a big factor for them if the promotion isn't there on the NBA side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the G League right now, I mean, pretty much all the games are, higher quality, truthfully, than every college game. And everybody knows that, the guys in the G League were all superstars of their college teams. But, yeah, I mean, you're right. They certainly face an uphill battle from a marketing standpoint. And, I think if they got like a Zion type, somebody that was a national name since they were 15 or whatever, maybe I think more people would tune in, especially if they were able to get those games on the main channels. But, yeah, if you just have them on YouTube and it's some kids that, are kind of names but not huge names, then, yeah, it could certainly hurt their exposure compared to going to a Duke in Kentucky and being a household name.
My fun conspiracy theory is LeBron James is pushing this so Bronny can go right to the G League and start dominating the G League, and then he'll orchestrate where Bronny goes so they can go together. That's my conspiracy theory.
Wouldn't shock me.
No, he kind of runs the league. So let's jump into the Wizards. You grew up watching them. Are you still a Wizards fan? Are they still the team that you follow more than anybody on top of all your other scouting stuff?
I'd say I kind of jump around the league pretty evenly now. It's hard to be a fan after you work for them and don't anymore now,
Even with that, I have to ask you, so you were there, you saw Wall and Beal up close and personal. Are those two good enough to, a healthy John Wall, who hopefully we get to see 100% healthy again soon, and Bradley Beal, are they good enough to put the Wizards into true contention, not just top 3 team that we know isn't going to win the East, but are they good enough to actually contend?
For a championship, probably not, not by themselves. Even in the peak, really good years we had. The ceiling was, losing in a Game 7 to Boston for the chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So still a long way to go. The fact that they've never made a conference finals even before you start talking about championships. But, I think it's they're two really good players. I think they complement each other better than most people think. And I think people forget sometimes that, that they were winning almost 50 games every year and making it, at least deep in the second round of the playoffs usually, which is, not an easy thing to do. So I think a lot of it will have, be about how Hachimura develops and how, if they're able to keep Bertans there for a long time and kind of how they end up surrounding those guys. Definitely this offseason will be a pretty big one, in terms of certainly I think they need another big man, a third banana, obviously. So, by themselves, no, but I certainly think it still could be an appealing place for a pretty good player to come to. And they had a pretty fun team this year, a really good offense, to go along with a woeful, awful defense. So there's something there. I just, time obviously is running out a little bit.
I always compare them. I call them like the Eastern Conference, Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum. I feel like they're both kind of in similar places where all four of those guys are stars, with Dame and John Wall being budding like superstars, but they just don't have enough help around them to continue to compete with the big teams. A guy that I watch for to go over to them is potentially Gobert, because if the Gobert and Mitchell rift get too thick, then they're going to get rid of Gobert, and that would be an ideal landing spot for him because I feel like he would mesh well. You talked about the bad defense there. He would put an end to that right away, and I feel like that could be the piece that they need to possibly push them over the edge. Yeah,
he would definitely be good there. It'd be a great roll man, lob guy for John and Brad, who both like to play, out of pick and rolls a lot. And like you said, I mean, that's the kind of move that can also take you from being like the worst defense of all time to, one of the best instantly. That's how, the impact that Gobert has on that end. So, I mean, he would be a massive leap over Mo Wagner and Thomas Bryant and whoever else is playing at the 5 for the Wizards. But, I don't know. It would be a huge mistake, in my opinion, unless Utah really got a huge ransom to, break apart that group.
Yeah, I hope that rift isn't too deep because it is fun watching Mitchell and Gobert operate together. They're both great, but you never know in the NBA, and especially with the personalities that are around now. And Gobert has been the bad guy for a little while with the whole entire coronavirus issue there. So it's, it's going to be interesting when play resumes, how they start to play together. And so we're going to jump into the next thing. We're going to have a little fun here. I want you to kind of put your scouting brain on, which I think you never take off, but I want you to put it on overdrive a little bit. I want you to give me your ideal starting 5, and not necessarily the 5 best players at their positions, but kind of, if you were sitting there trying to scout for a team, the 5 best fit that have the best styles that would give you the best chance to win. Who would be your ideal starting 5 in the current NBA?
I'll go with Luka, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, Giannis. I think it's pretty close to being the, top 5 players in the league, give or take a guy or two. But, today's positionless NBA, I mean, you can obviously stick LeBron at the 5 some. You have, multiple ball handlers in Luka and Harden. You have a couple freak defenders in Kawhi and Giannis, obviously, and, mid-range scorers. You pretty much 3-point shooters. You got the whole package kind of with those 5. So that's what I'd go with.
So would a guy like a healthy Kevin Durant, if he comes back as Kevin Durant, would he push one of those guys out, or are you still sticking with those 5?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I think it, again, depends what exactly you need or are looking for. I hate the term, like, honestly, I hate the term best, like trying to just rank like the best 5 in the league because, Giannis, he wins MVPs. So some people think he's the best player in the league, but like he hasn't had the playoff success yet, in large part because, he doesn't have a good enough jump shot. So, what works in the regular season doesn't always work in the playoffs, and, vice versa sometimes. But, KD is certainly, probably the best pure scorer of that group. So, if I needed a bucket, ultimately I'd certainly put him on the team. But, if I needed, athleticism and just, freakish motor, it's hard to pick against Giannis or Kawhi, so on. So he'd if I took him as my sixth man, I think that'd be a pretty good team too.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. So lastly, being a scout and doing what you do in your time as a head video coordinator, how does it let you kind of see the game differently? Can you watch games normally anymore? Or as you're watching, are you constantly looking and, you see an offensive play call and then all of a sudden you see the way the defense sets up and you're like, oh, that ain't going to work. Like, is that something that just constantly processes in your brain, or can you just sit back and enjoy the game?
It's funny. It is pretty hard to turn off at times. Definitely hard to not kind of obsess over the X's and O's and strategy and things like that are going on. And, sometimes you end up even missing, even though I can break the game down with, an incredible level of detail, sometimes you'll miss, really obvious things that casual fans will be watching, that guy's got 4 fouls. They better get him out of the game or go at him or, whatever. There can be, or I'll, totally tune out on the fact that a guy has 30 points because I'll be, looking too much at just kind of what sets they're running and what's working and so on. So, it's I still love the game. I mean, I don't think I ever stopped enjoying it. It's still easy, even watching it that way, to still really enjoy it. But I would say, I certainly have a hard time not having the scouting hat on and just kind of, watching it like a fan at times for sure.
So before we close out the show, Kyrie Irving was on IG Live the other day with Daryl Truck Bryant, basically called out Kemba Walker, saying he wants to see him one-on-one. That would be the guy that he wants to play. Stems back from their AAU time, New York, New Jersey. It's not Celtics Nets, but it's kind of a mutual respect thing. If they actually played this, who do you have winning that?
One-on-one, I think, Kyrie would probably beat most guys in the NBA. That's kind of what his game is built on, and he's got the size advantage and kind of more post game and ISO and handle and all those things. So he'd win one-on-one, but I do think Kemba is a better team player, honestly, and and I think that's a big part of why the Celtics are better this year. I think Kemba is just a much better fit in Brad Stevens' system, and you see they're moving the ball again and running plays and actually playing like a team. And some of the things Kyrie didn't do very well, to be honest. So yeah, he's an amazing talent, an amazing one-on-one player, but I think he still kind of has to understand a little better, what he has to do in a team environment to win. And I think Kemba, did a really good job and has done a very good job of that over his career.
That hurts my heart a little bit because I'm a Nets fan, so I was hoping you were going to be a little more positive on Kyrie.
Well, when KD's back, I think they won't have too much of an issue figuring it out. But
it's KD's
leadership
team
too. So.
Yeah, it's KD's team, and then it'll be Kyrie, and then kind of Spencer or LeVert would be the third guy. So that's how that's going to go. But all right, Bryan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate you having me. Enjoyed it.
Again, that's Bryan Oringher. He's the host of Scout with Bryan podcast. You can go scoutwithbryan.com, visit his Patreon through there, and also his Twitter. Your Twitter handle is @ScoutWithBryan as well, correct?
Yep, Scout with Bryan with the Y, wherever you go.
All right. Any other links or anything that you would like to give specifically out there so people can find any more of you?
No, I think, like you said, just, Scout with Bryan handle. YouTube is another big place. You can find a lot of the pretty in-depth, breakdown videos, and certainly some of the, scouting report type stuff, hopefully coming soon when we maybe have some idea when a draft or playoffs or whatever will be. So hopefully soon.
Hopefully, yeah, we can only hope that that happens soon. So, all right, again, I'm Alex Cuesta, host of the Sports Opinions Podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram, Sports Opinions30. Search for us on Facebook, and anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find this. Just search Sports Opinions Podcast. Subscribe, rate us, give us a positive review, listen to my awesome guests because they're all fantastic. So, once again, really appreciate everyone for listening. Have a good one all.